being on the fence of entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur at heart, but living the life of an employee, it's a really, really difficult place to be. It's a painful place to be. And I'm so glad that I've been able to take that journey and take the leap to become an entrepreneur.
My name's Troy Lavinia, and I'm founder and CEO of Mosaic Research Management and Mosaic RM Software. After starting our service business in 2010, in 2011 I joined the foundation in order to explore creating a software business that would provide value to our customer base and a steady SaaS-based revenue stream to our company. I started without an idea, without funding for the product, and with very little experience building software. We created the product after doing idea extraction and discovering a pain that hedge funds have with compliance and their overall research process. Our app is built on the Salesforce.com platform, and we've structured a partnership with Salesforce.com that allows us to sell our app and the Salesforce platform as a combined solution to customers in the hedge fund industry. After 2 years, we've had tremendous success. We've created a software product that's been profitable since day one and now has 20 multi-billion-dollar hedge fund clients. Most importantly, the app has allowed us to create deep relationships and a really strong presence in the hedge fund market.
Welcome to Foundation Interview. I'm your fearless host, Dane Maxwell, and we have a special guest for you today. One of the first, what I would call test subjects to go through our first foundation program, the first cohort of 88 students. He bared it all as we just kind of flew by the seat of our pants, and he's been under the radar, and I'd like to bring him out because he has so much knowledge and wisdom to share with you. So today we're going to do a few things. We're going to just learn from Troy, and I'll introduce you in a second here, but learn from Troy and how he became the kind of guy who can run such a fantastic organization in the 7 figures with a team of 13 people, but also where he came from and how he started. Hear his journey through the 6 months of the foundation, because he had a few winding turns, and then also his habits. His habits are remarkable in the way that he lives his life. One of the questions we often get is, how do you stay motivated throughout the journey? And Troy has an amazing 7-step thing that he follows every day to keep motivated through his habits. And then finally, just setting an intention for this interview, we're just going to be bearing the truth. We're not going to try to manipulate things and make them sound better than they are or rosier than they are. It's going to be a really hard-hitting, factual, real conversation among 2 entrepreneurs. So Troy, what me and all the ladies would like to know is, how did you become so ridiculously good looking? So thank you for being here, Troy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
It's a pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about your background, where you came from, and what kind of business you're in.
So my background, I grew up outside of Philadelphia and went to school in Philadelphia, moved to New York City after school, and have lived here for the past 11 years, and now living with my wife and my 3-year-old son, James. Live about 3 blocks from here, from the office, luckily enough, and worked in the financial services industry for about 5 years prior to starting Mosaic, which is my company, and did that 4 years ago, and our company is really dedicated to helping hedge funds do better proprietary research, and that's what we do. And right now have a team of about 13 people and growing out our service business and our software business. And that's it. What else can I tell you?
So what in the world does proprietary hedge fund research mean?
Before I answer that, let me tell you how I got into that field, because I guess it's a little bit of a niche. Was working at Citigroup supporting brokers, helping them sell retirement plans, and wanted to get into institutional sales, working with hedge funds and mutual funds as opposed to selling retirement plans. And so I took a job at a place called Vista Research, which is an expert network. And expert networks, they put institutional investors in touch with experts and advisors for research purposes. Worked there for a couple of years, then took a job at a hedge fund, managing proprietary research internally at the fund, and I can talk about what that actually means, but loved doing it. But I knew that I wasn't really happy I think it was a good job, but really wanted to be an entrepreneur, wanted to have my own company. Had almost started my own company previously, and it kind of slipped away from me. And so every single day doing that job, felt very lucky to have the job, but knew I wasn't completely fulfilled and that I wouldn't be until I started my own company. And so that's why I made the plunge in 2010. So I'll just tell you kind of what that means, what research is, proprietary research. So hedge funds, for anybody who doesn't know, are basically big pools of money from endowments, pension funds, and wealthy individuals that are being managed by hedge fund managers, analysts, and portfolio managers who basically pick investments, and they can invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, anything they want in order to generate a good return. When they're doing research on their potential investments, they're potentially, the clients we work with, they have anywhere from $1 billion to $20 billion under management. So if they're thinking about making an investment in, let's say, Nike, the footwear company, they might be investing $100 million. So they're not just going to read a report about Nike or hear something and see something in the Wall Street Journal or attend a conference and think that they understand everything. They're really going to dig deep, and they're going to understand how that business works. They're going to model it out. And they want people to kind of hold their hands as much as possible through that process to make sure that they really understand the fundamentals. And so we might find for them the former CEO of Nike, who's retired but would like to be an advisor to them and who can help them understand the business and how it works. Or we might find them C-level employees at footwear distributors who can talk about current supply and demand within the industry. So our job is to help put them in touch with people who can help them better understand the industries that they're thinking about investing in. And they pay us for any of the engagements that they have with these people we find for them, and we pay these experts. And hopefully they pay us more than we pay the experts, and that's how we make money for that service. And that's the proprietary research process, and that's our place in it. We're essentially a matchmaker for experts and advisors and our hedge fund client base.
So I'm curious, wanting to be an entrepreneur, what was it like being an employee?
What was it like to be an employee? I was probably a really bad employee. When I graduated, jumped around for a few different jobs, and then really found this business, the proprietary research, that I was really passionate about, and I loved it. And I was working my butt off, and I think being very successful. I think there's more than two types of people, but I think that in life, there are people that should be entrepreneurs, and then there's other people that aren't. And it's just kind of who you are, like the color of your skin or the color of your hair. I've thought about this a lot lately, and part of why I really enjoy what I'm doing now is because I feel like I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And if you're an entrepreneur at heart and you're not living that life, for me at least, I didn't feel whole. I had some brushes with entrepreneurship. When I was working at Vista Research, I was about to start a company with somebody else, and it fell through, the idea fell through, and then I went on to have my job at the hedge fund, and every single day I thought about starting that company, and I couldn't get past that. So not giving advice, and I've talked to people about this a lot recently actually, but if you feel like you're an entrepreneur at heart and you're not living that life, at least for me, I didn't feel whole, for lack of a better term. I knew I had a good job, and on paper I should have been happy, but I wasn't fulfilled, and that's really difficult when you're not able to reconcile what you see on paper and how you're feeling about yourself. And I suspect for a lot of people that are watching this, they either have jumped in fully, or if they haven't, they might be feeling the same way. And so for me, I wasn't whole. And so taking that next step got to a point, I was talking with my wife, where I knew I wouldn't be happy no matter what. No matter how much money I could make or how high I could climb within an organization, I wasn't going to be happy if I didn't start this business. And so if you know that you're not going to be, then for me, it was just a matter of figuring out the logistics and making sure that I could maximize my chance of success, and then jumping, and lucky to have a wife that was willing to support that.
So in terms of the foundation, I want to get into that part of your journey, and I want to hear the start to the finish and all the messy details, from the markets you considered to pick and end up picking, the ideas that you went to and then dropped, and then ultimately the end solution that you arrived at, and how you got there.
So started the foundation. I can tell you, if you want, how I found you, actually. Had built a software platform for one of our clients as a custom application, wanted to figure out how to build a company around that and build a software product that would be different, that we could sell to the market. And constantly listening to podcasts and books about entrepreneurship and business and self-development, and was listening to Mixergy, and had heard you promoting the first software roundtable, which is now the foundation. And one of the things that you were talking about was power versus force. And for me and my wife, I've been doing yoga for a number of years and meditating, and that was one of the first books that was introduced to me about 10 years ago from one of the yoga teachers that I worked with. And a fantastic book. And so I think I just connected with you before we even met, when you were talking about that and entrepreneurship and coming up with a replicable system for building a business. And that just got me very excited. And so that's why I joined the foundation in the first place. When we started, I really stress that. I think that's one of the most interesting things about this, is that it's a formula, or that it's a replicable system for figuring out how to build a business. So you have control over that, and it's not something that's left to chance, and you're maximizing your chances of success with this. So to start, I had a business to begin with. I have a service business. It was a small business at the time. It was about 3 employees, a couple $100,000 of revenue, and wanted to do a software product potentially that would cater to the same market. It would be kind of a deviation of what I had done for that first client, that custom project. But when I started the foundation, really wanted to do each of the steps that you had talked about. So starting with idea extraction, or selecting a market, idea extraction. At that time, my business wasn't extremely established, so I didn't have any problems with picking potentially a different market. And so there was a couple of markets that I originally looked at. One of them was my current market, talking to general counsels and chief compliance officers at hedge funds to see what solutions they might need. But in addition, did graphic designers. So spent a lot of time cold calling graphic designers to talk to them about the problems in their business. And just the thesis being that there's a lot of graphic designers. It's a really good market, and their willingness to pay. They should, have some potential willingness to pay if we can create something that would help them drive revenue. And they are people who are very good at their art in most cases, but aren't very good at managing their business. So that spoke to me. So if we could create something that would help them be more successful entrepreneurs, more successful business people, then it would be pretty rewarding, in addition to potentially being financially successful. So that was probably where I spent, for phases 1 and 2, probably where I spent more of my time. Probably interviewed, I'd say, 20 to 30 graphic designers and 15 to 20 general counsels and chief compliance officers at hedge funds. So did both of those things at the same time. Set up a pretty good system for sending out email blasts, using mail merges to get in touch with graphic designers. I had those conversations, developed, not an MVP, but a lot of mock-ups of a product for graphic designers that they really liked. And so I think I have something there that maybe they'll come back to at some point. But ultimately I got to kind of a fork in the road where I had to make a decision. I had these general counsels and chief compliance officers in my existing target market that had a product that we could develop, versus a completely different market in a product that could potentially be helpful for graphic designers. And I chose to go with the hedge fund market because our existing service business was already focused on that.
So you said you started off targeting graphic designers, and you were sending them emails and having phone calls. Did you have trouble initially on the first few phone calls? Did it take you a while to get in the groove, or how'd that go?
I've been doing sales and recruiting for a long time, and so I have a pretty good sense of how to set up a system to get a certain number of people to talk to me, basically. And so what I did was I set up an email system that allowed me to target, I forget what the number was, but maybe it was 50 or 100 graphic designers every couple of days. I would do a campaign, and then I would hit them with that email sequence every, maybe 3 times until they responded to me and told me to buzz off or decided to talk with me. And I would set up intro calls with them that way, just asking them for 5 minutes to explain what I was doing and get their thoughts. And that turned out to be a really good system because for me it makes sense, it's replicable, and it's, I think, a lot less painful at first than picking up the phone and trying to cold call a market that you don't necessarily know, because I didn't know these guys at all.
Right, so that's fascinating. So you actually would set up a phone call, like a 5-minute intro call?
Yeah, I'd set up an intro call that would lead into an interview, and most of those would end up being a half hour, 45 minutes. But you just ask for 5 to 10 minutes to get their thoughts about what you're doing and explain what you're doing. And then, probably 70% of those end up being really great extraction calls.
Mm. And how would you typically start a call with a graphic designer? If you remember.
Thank you. And I find this in any business meeting. It's like you start, they can't see you, so the smile, but I think a smile would come across. But if anything in person, it's a big smile and a big thank you. I think people really respond well to gratitude, and if their first experience with you is that you're a grateful person, it's going to be a good call, most likely. And so, completely disregarding business or idea extraction, it's gratitude. And then after that, after saying thank you and expressing the gratitude, then I think that sets the stage nicely. And I would explain to them what I was doing. I think it's important to have a tight summary of what you're doing I think it shows respect to the person you're talking to if you're able to really tightly explain what you're trying to accomplish, why you want to talk to them, what's in it for them, what's in it for you. Kind of give them an outline of the agenda of the call and tell them how long it's going to take. And again, I do that in any business call. So it's like, thank you so much. The reason why I was calling is this. I thought it would be interesting for you because of this. And what I wanted to talk with you about today was really just this and this, and should be about 5 minutes, really painless. So again, thanks so much. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? And then go from there. And I think that really sets the stage nicely. The person feels good about themselves. They'll probably sit back in their chair wherever they are, and they'll start to open up to you, I think, pretty quickly if you start on the right foot with them.
What sort of pains were you discovering when you were talking to graphic designers?
One thing, it's really interesting. If you would have asked me that question 2 years ago, you probably have it on camera or on tape somewhere, I would have probably said, I can't tell you. I found out something pretty juicy, and it's mine. It's my business idea. But one of the things that I've realized is so clear over the past 4 years is that there's abundance, absolutely 100%. And if you share your ideas, I used to be scared to share my ideas when I first started my business or first started this software business, making people sign NDAs or thinking that the idea is the key. And really there's abundance. And every time when I've had an opportunity and I've questioned whether or not I should share an idea with somebody, 100% of the time, it's eventually karmically benefited me, come back to benefit me. So I think that's actually something that's pretty interesting that everybody in the foundation should realize is that, and this is really, really true in fact, when you're doing this, you're doing the idea extraction, you're getting these ideas. One of the biggest enemies of a successful business is enclosure. and not being open with your ideas. So if you talk about your ideas, even with other people in the foundation who are looking for ideas themselves, you talk about those ideas, they propagate. And if you have that abundance mindset, then people will be attracted to you, and your business will snowball much faster. You'll get better ideas back from people by sharing your ideas. Your product will evolve much faster, and you're going to be in a really much better place much faster if you go out of your way to share your ideas, especially when you think that they're ideas that are sensitive or that you shouldn't share. And I found that to be 100% true over the past 4 years. So anyway, the idea that I came up with was an idea for pricing discovery for graphic designers. So there's graphic designers, one of the pains that I found for them from talking with them was that you take any group of freelancers or artists, for the most part very good artists, not great business people, or maybe they are great business people, but they don't identify with that, so they have a limiting belief about whether or not they're good business people. And so a tool that would help them manage their client base better and interact with their client base better was something that I was onto, but not just a CRM. So what this tool was is kind of like crowdsourcing price discovery for working with different clients. So if you're a graphic designer, and I think this becomes more relevant as more graphic designers or more freelancers work in different areas of the country. So if you're here in New York, maybe you're working with a client in Des Moines, Iowa. You don't have any idea what the client in Des Moines, Iowa would be willing to pay for what you do, right? And so it's one of these things. It's been a few years, so this is just a little blurry, but the idea is that you would submit, as a graphic designer, as a user, you'd be submitting, this platform could ask you questions and you'd be submitting answers about, how you would price particular types of jobs and particular types of clients within the area that you live. And based on a certain client type, or based on the type of job, so logo design for a client that has $10 million in revenue versus a full brochure for somebody who is an entrepreneur. Like, you want to price those things differently. And what I found by talking with people is that they had no idea how to price their services. And so graphic designers were leaving a ton of money on the table by pricing themselves too low and then getting bitter and upset when they didn't price things properly. They bid hourly instead of fixed bid, etc. Or they were losing jobs because they would price too high. And so having a mechanism that would allow them to do proper price discovery. So Eric, you're doing video for a client in a particular area, you could go on here and say, okay, I'm doing video for Dane Maxwell, his company is this big, it's this long of a shoot, he wants this type of video. Oh, there's 5,000 people who have actually bid and answered the question about that, I should be charging him X. So that you could have more appropriate pricing and get the job and not leave money on the table. So that was the idea that I came up with.
I love that you brought up abundance. And abundance is an amazing concept that really your body feels open, you feel expanded, you feel happy, you're not worried, you're not afraid, you're not in survival mode. And abundance is really a state of being that says, I'm going to be okay, no matter what. And when you're okay no matter what, you in this open vibrational state of happiness, you just share things. And so what happens is when you're not successful by, let's say, financial standards, what happens is the world becomes a very scarce place that you feel like you maybe have to fight for, which couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah, there may be some fighting that exists in business in the world, but we don't have to operate that way. And so what I love is seeing someone come into the foundation and say, well, what about if I give my idea to a developer? Is a developer going to steal that idea? That's a lack of abundance. And what about if I give the idea to a customer? That's a lack of abundance. What if I'm actually talking to a customer and a customer that I'm talking to says, well, I can't give you the idea because it's too valuable? Then you're talking to someone who's also not in abundance. You want to drop that call. What I can tell you is that operating from an abundant place, giving out everything, unless it's like the blueprint for like Viagra or like something in pharmaceuticals, you might use some discretion on what you want to like totally give out. I drove by the owner of the Viagra guy's house in Miami. He's like a billionaire. The house is insane. I probably wouldn't give that out. Generally speaking, though, ideas, the more that you share them, the more it grows your love for yourself, and the more it actually comes back to help you. So I love that you brought up abundance, and I love that you've been able to transition from being worried about sharing an idea to, you know what, I want to share this idea because it's amazing, and if someone goes out and can help more graphic designers, I've just made the world a better place by operating from that space of abundance. Another example that I'd like to mention is when students are on idea extraction calls and the person that they're talking to mentions a pain and there's already a product out there that solves it. Well, that's a lack of abundance on two issues. One is that they think since the product exists that then they can't create one as well. Well, if Burger King or Wendy's thought that, because they saw McDonald's, those wouldn't exist. But if you notice, they're all right next to each other and they're all doing really well from what I know. I actually don't know. I haven't looked at the financial statements, but I see people going in all of them. So when someone's on a call with a customer or a potential customer and they give a pain, they ask me, Dane, should I share a solution that already exists? Well, what would you do in an abundant place? I'd share the idea. What would you do in a scarce place? I probably wouldn't share the idea. Well, what ends up happening is you say, oh, well, there's this product out here that does X, Y, Z. And more often than not, the person will say, oh yeah, I've already heard of that. It actually doesn't do da-da-da-da-da. And now you're like, oh my gosh, I've just shared what already exists, and now I know I can actually make it better. The other thing that happens is they end up going to use the product, and then if they're happy with it, then you've just saved yourself time. And they can try it though, and if they're not happy with it, then you can actually build a simpler version of the product. So abundance actually just totally serves you in every area and every aspect of your life. And as you become a more present, conscious entrepreneur, which we love to teach in the foundation, you get tapped into that experience in your body. You can tell that abundance feels really light and free, and the lack of abundance or scarcity feels like you're kind of hoarding and protecting. So dropping ideas can be kind of like that, whatever this feeling is. How did you drop the graphic designer idea to ultimately pick this thing in the hedge fund space?
I mean, it was a difficult decision to go with the hedge fund product instead of the graphic designer product, but ultimately I figured I had a business that was in that space, and focus is a good thing, and so I decided that I would put the graphic designer idea on the back burner, put it on my list of business ideas to get to someday, and focus on the hedge fund product.
But why?
Because of focus. I was one person. I had a three-person business. I'm one person. I had a three-person business, and trying to run a service business for hedge funds and at the same time run a software business for graphic designers, that would spread you too thin. So I decided to stay focused, and at least I could have some congruence with the market that we were serving, which has actually ended up being a huge success, being able to sell the product and the service to the same market.
Yeah, what's that been like to have a service business and then have it supplemented by the software? What's that whole process been like?
Yeah, so it's been really, really good. It adds some diversification to the business without being unfocused. I think focus is super, super important, and we really had to make sure our service business was where we needed it to be before we focused on the software, and now I've gone back to focusing on the service business to get it back up where I think it needs to be. But it's been a great thing. If you think about it from our customers' standpoint, if they want to, they can use us for either thing. They can use our software and they can use our service, and to help them with the same mission of doing better proprietary research. And from our point of view, it's great because a service business and a software business are really complementary. So we're a service business, you have lower upfront startup costs, you have potentially lower operating costs, or not lower operating costs, you have lower upfront costs to get a service business running, potentially higher revenue, versus software, which is something that people might not be willing to pay as much money for as a really high-end service. but it's something that's very consistent. So service business, you have kind of lumpy revenue potentially. And so if you have these two things, they complement each other really well. You have a service business that has pretty high but lumpy fluctuating revenue over time. And you have a service business that provides a very consistent, profitable stream of income once you get it up and running.
A service business?
I mean, the software business that provides kind of a very consistent stream of revenue. Yeah, so they work well. They work really well together.
Yeah, I imagine they work really well together. And as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that some of the most ideal people for the foundation could be people in service businesses that are desiring more consistent income.
Absolutely.
Can you think of any instances where you might not want to recommend a service business add a consistent recurring revenue software component?
If it was a stretch, if there's really no, so yeah, a couple of reasons. So let's say you have a service business, or you start a service business as a way of kind of getting off the fence and becoming an entrepreneur, because it's certainly easier to just start doing something, right? So you have a service business. Should you start a software business? I think number one, you have to think about the fit and the target market. You want to be laser focused on the right people. And so if I'm focused in my service business on long-short equity hedge funds that are anywhere from $1 billion to $20 billion assets under management, let's say it's a very small niche, so maybe there's 150 of them out there, to start a software business that was focused even on a slightly different niche even within the hedge fund industry would be a mistake. So let's say I had a service business that was servicing graphic designers. I went and cleaned their computer screens, I don't know, right? And that's what I did. And I had a team of people that went and cleaned computer screens for graphic designers in urban areas. To start a software business that wasn't focused specifically on graphic designers in urban areas would be a mistake, even if it was focused on graphic designers. So just being laser focused on the market and making sure that those two markets are exactly the same is absolutely critical. So if they're not, and so I guess if you have a service business, make sure that you're really defining it as narrowly as possible, actually, and then make sure that there's some real need there for software, that these are, they pass a traditional test, like do they want to use software? Can software complement what you're already doing? Is there a viable software business within the very specific niche of what you're doing within your service business?
So you kind of glossed over real briefly a very, very, I would say, could be an advanced concept to some people. However, more generally known to businesses in the seven-figure range is, you said, a very specific customer with a very specific dollar amount and a very specific target in a market. Can you talk into a little bit about how, if you were starting idea extraction over again, how would you go about picking a market?
I would be as first of all, as narrowly defined as possible. I would make sure I was defining it very specifically. So you take graphic designers or hedge funds, I think you want to even get more refined than that. Graphic designers are a big market. There's probably a lot of different types of graphic designers. So maybe focusing on people whose expertise is logo design, or focusing on people who do book design. So I think getting to a market that's as narrowly focused as possible. I read this, Peter Thiel, one of the founders of PayPal, just came out with a book called 0 to 1. This is one of the points that he mentioned, kind of confirmed my thinking on this, is that you want to start with a market that's as small as possible to support the business, and then conquer that market, and then conquer adjacent markets after that. So if you could start with graphic designers who specialize in book design and provide a really great product for them, your story will connect with them. So everything that you're doing will be more effective. Your conversion will be higher. So when you're doing idea extraction calls, you'll understand them better. They'll resonate. You guys will connect better. You'll be able to cater your story and your message and your product to them much better than you would be if you weren't that focused. And if you think about in any business that's worth being in, you're going to have competition. And so as a small business owner, you're creating an application, an app in this case, if you're laser focused on one particular target market as narrowly as possible, that's really one of your only competitive advantages. So you could be the only person selling an app to graphic designers that focus on book design. And they'll connect with that and they'll buy it from you because of that.
Dude, I want to talk about the personal game. How important do you think the personal game is in entrepreneurship? By personal game, I mean mindset, emotions, subconscious programming, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's the foundation. No pun intended. It's what it's all built on. So it's the most important thing. I mean, you need to be 100% committed in your subconscious, your conscious mind, and really be committed to doing this. Absolutely. So I think starting with your subconscious, you need to have the wind at your back, so to speak. So if there's limiting beliefs, if there's things that are not congruent with the path of success that you consciously want, you're going to be holding yourself back. I think I shared with you one time, I saw a YouTube video where your conscious mind is like the tip of an iceberg and your subconscious mind is everything underneath. And if your subconscious mind is going the wrong way, you just can't get where you want to go. And so if you can figure out ways to get your subconscious mind and really program your subconscious mind to believe what you want, to be in line with where you're trying to get consciously, that's like the most important thing, I would say. And I've had trouble with it myself, and I'm still figuring it out. Me too. And so, if you want to achieve wealth, but you have things in your background or your past that don't jive with that, like your parents had, let's say, a scarcity mindset. And I've seen that with a lot of my friends and with a lot of people that I've worked with. They want to be successful, they want to have wealth, but their parents didn't. Their parents had a scarcity mindset, and that was ingrained in them, and at a very young age. Does that make sense?
Totally, it makes amazing sense. And I want to jump into one of the processes that you do each day as part of your personal games. I admire how disciplined you are. Like, you blow me out of the water in terms of your discipline. And I'd like for you to talk about this thing that you've set up. Do you still do the 7 things every day?
Yeah. Pretty much every day, and if I don't, I keep track of it. So these were just 7 habits that I've read and that I've experienced help cause happiness and stability in my life. One thing is kind of personal. When I graduated from college, I went through kind of a difficult period. Just for a couple of months, went through a depression, and that was just a very, very scary experience in the moment, and I think a really humbling experience for years afterwards, because if your happiness and your stability are cut out from under you with going through a depression or going through some sort of trauma, it's really scary because you don't know if that could just happen again for no reason. And so what I've strived to do over time is put in place things in my life that I had control over that could help give me stability. And even now, if you're sick, if I'm sick or I'm going through a little kind of period where I'm a little depressed or upset, I know I can focus on these 7 things that are 100% in my control. And if I get into them, then things, I'll get at least to a stable ground mentally and emotionally and physically, so that I can go back to being who I am. Because if you're in a bad place mentally or emotionally, it's really hard to cope with even the smallest things in life, much less trying to run a business or run a family or be a good parent. So I still absolutely keep track of them every single day. And if I start to slack, or if I'm starting to have a difficult period in my life, I rededicate myself to them really hard. And since doing this, just a ton of benefits. There's more stability in my life. I have I think you start doing things and you create good habits, and that creates a snowball effect, and you feel empowered, and then you can really feel like you can do anything and be successful. So putting in place these habits has absolutely been, I think, it's right above kind of your subconscious in the foundation that you're trying to create for yourself. So I'd say the very first thing we talked about, making sure that your subconscious mind is moving you in the same direction that as you consciously want to go. And then right above that, making sure that you have habits in place and a routine basically that works for you, that keeps you firing on all cylinders, that keeps your tank full. And that's really what I feel like for the most part. My tank's full and I feel great. I'm able to fire on all cylinders because I have these habits in place. And the subconscious stuff I'm still working on. And I think I sabotage myself, not on purpose obviously, but I still do that. And I think I have some limiting beliefs about wealth and about success and about abundance, and I'm working on those. But at least if I put these habits in place, working on your subconscious or working on your business or improving a different area of your life becomes really possible because you're functioning from a good place at least.
So I find myself, as I'm hearing you explain these 7 things and the benefits, and also really appreciating the humility of you sharing that you have these limiting beliefs too, and here you are with a 7-figure business and doing all these things, and hearing that's like, oh wow, that makes me like relaxed, like okay, I'm not unnormal for having these limiting beliefs as well. So what I'm ultimately really curious about is, what are the 7 things and how did you specifically develop it? Because I imagine these aren't just 7 things that you did right away. It probably iterated and evolved into 7 things, or you tell me.
Okay, number 1, nutrition. If you're not eating right, whatever that means to you. So I do slow carb or paleo, but whatever you think is a good nutritional plan, give yourself 3 points a day for that, and subtract a point for any infractions, similar to like the whole life challenge. Number 2 is gratitude. I think one of the most important things. You can keep chasing things, but if you don't take a few minutes every day to think about what it is that's surrounding you and within you that you're grateful for, that's really the mental pattern that you're trying to create. So that's number 2, is spending time on gratitude every day. Number 3 is relationships. Like, humans are social people, and so whether you're feeling good or not, you can absolutely control whether or not you call a friend. And so I usually give myself a point if I call somebody that I don't need anything from, whether it's a family member or a friend that I want to have a better relationship with, and just talk with them. Number 4 is working out. So staying physically fit for just a few minutes a day. My average workout now is about 7 minutes every morning, but just something to keep yourself physically fit and get your blood moving. Number 5 is meditation. So spending time every day in some sort of focused meditation, or whether it's formal or informal, but doing some meditation to clean your mind. Number 6 is sleep. So it might be different for everybody, but for me it's about 7 hours. I know that I need to be at 100%, making sure that I'm getting that. And number 7 is goals. So making sure that you have a really strong vision at all times and some really great goals that you're working towards. And every day just doing a little bit to chip away at those. I usually give myself 2 points, 1 for having that vision and reviewing it mentally, and also 1 point for actually acting on it, just doing even 1 or 2 things that will move you towards your goals. And these are a combination of things that I've tried that I know are important to me as well. There's a book called The Happiness Hypothesis that talks about some of these things, and just in general, these are things that have been proven to create happiness or stability. And so I think if I systematically do these things, if I wake up and feeling depressed or feeling bad, you can't control happiness. Happiness is a byproduct, but you can absolutely control these things that you do, and every one of these 7 things are something that you could commit yourself, or that I commit myself to doing as much as possible on a daily basis.
So if you're like me, after hearing Troy share this 7 habits thing, it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know how to do anything with it. So what Troy has done is he put together a Google spreadsheet in the form of a Google form that you can fill out every day to track the 7 different things. And we've got that below the video. And in order to get access to that, we just ask that you share this beautiful message of entrepreneurship with the world with your Facebook friends, and then we'll give you access to that spreadsheet. But I ask you to also wait so you're not distracted by this content while we wrap up with the last few really important points of this interview. It's obvious from watching that you're incredibly intelligent, and so I'm serious. And so I'm wondering, what do you do for this? I imagine you read a lot, and I'm curious how much you read, and also curious if you could just randomly throw off the last few books as well.
Yeah, so I'm actually almost illiterate at this point, and if I see an email that's more than three lines long, I kind of get intimidated. But I listen to books. I have an Audible app on my phone, and so just listen to a ton of books, a couple books a week, like you said. Mostly improvement, self-improvement books or business books or some sort of biography. A few of them. Audible has a really great thing called Great Courses, so it's almost like doing a college course. And so I read one of those on the science of mindfulness, which was really interesting. You'd probably like that. My wife and I listened to one about the history of Mozart, biography of Mozart. Some great business books. Karmic Management was one that kind of touches on some of the stuff that you and I talked about abundance and giving and how that will benefit you. A couple that I always go back to are The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, as well as I'm just drawing a blank, but the Think and Grow Rich as well. So just have a library of these books and find new ones every few weeks and go back to some of the staples when I'm feeling like I need a little boost or some confidence in a particular area. And I found, at least for me, the best time to listen to these is in the morning when I'm going through my routines. I'll listen to them. When I'm walking to work, I'll listen to them as well if we're taking a car ride as a family going out to Long Island, which we do often.
Yeah. So if you're like me, the sort of 7 habits that Troy has shared, they can feel a little messy to implement, a little overwhelming. So what we've done is we've put together a Google Forms spreadsheet. It's our gift to you for free. And in return for offering this for free, we'd love to have you share this interview on Facebook with your friends so we can introduce more people into the possibilities of entrepreneurship. But before you share, let's get into one of the most important questions. Troy, what do you feel are the greatest pitfalls that are sabotaging entrepreneurs from being successful?
Number one, and there's probably a lot of different things tactically that people could do better, but a lot of them lead back to the same thing, which is confidence. So really believing in yourself that you're able to do this. The difference between somebody sitting in a cubicle wanting to do something and somebody who takes action is the belief that you can be successful, and everyone can if you want to be. And I think one of the great things about what you've incorporated into the foundation, especially in the recent years, is some of the stuff about the subconscious and how you're able to get people through that. So that's number one, is confidence, and learning how to become confident in yourself if you don't have that naturally, which most of us don't. Number two is commitment, just unwavering commitment. Saying, you're an entrepreneur or you're not. You don't take courses about entrepreneurship. You don't join the foundation to learn about entrepreneurship. You're either an entrepreneur or you're not. And you've either gotten off the fence and become an entrepreneur and followed your heart and are doing what you are meant to be doing, or you haven't. And so I think going into this understanding that it's going to take that absolute commitment to get off the fence and become an entrepreneur for real in order to be successful is something that people need to know that they're going to have to do. And if they do that, you can teach them how to build confidence in themselves, but they need to have that commitment to get off the fence and become an entrepreneur. So a program like the foundation, it can give you the tools, it can give you the ladder to get off the fence, but ultimately you're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to make that decision and make that commitment to become an entrepreneur.
So Troy, I want to thank you for coming here, and I also want to thank you as an entrepreneur for jumping off the fence. And now Troy had already jumped off the fence by the time he came to the foundation, and the foundation helped him add consistent recurring revenue to his service-based business, which is an incredible thing, an incredible feat to do for a business. Most service businesses never do this. And so I just want to commend you for that, and also thank you for your time for coming on. With that in mind, we're now at the end of this interview. I hope it's been tremendously valuable to you. So you have 3 things that you could consider doing right now. The first is to share click the share button below to get access to the spreadsheet where you can see Troy's 7 daily habits. Highly recommend it. The second thing is if you're interested in getting off the fence as an entrepreneur, which is one of the reasons we created the foundation, is to create more entrepreneurs in the world who have the heart of entrepreneurship. You can always apply for the foundation by clicking the apply button somewhere on this page. And the third is if you have someone in your life who you love and who you know is frustrated as an employee, or who you know needs to hear more of the message of entrepreneurship, would you please send this video to them so they can be enriched and inspired and know that there's more possible for their life than they're currently seeing for themselves.